This is a recording of You Gentiles by Maurice Samuel. This book is in the public domain. Recording by Grips. Chapter 12. Solution and Dissolution. Does the situation which I have described constitute a problem, or is it merely one of the insoluble difficulties of life which, being insoluble, should be understood as such and suffered tacitly? Death is not a problem, being inevitable. Is this struggle between our two worlds as inevitable? Shall we resign ourselves to the struggle and do what we can to mitigate its worst effects, or shall we continue the search for a complete solution? The one solution which is generally offered as a complete and satisfactory is, quite apart from its feasibility, not a solution at all, only a dissolution. The disappearance of the Jewish people by complete submergence in the surrounding world would not, in reality, solve the problem any more than one solves a chess problem by burning the chessboard and figures. But it would seem to do the next best thing. It would apparently destroy the situation which creates the problem. The problem, without having been solved, would at any rate cease to exist. And by dissolution of the Jewish people can be meant only one thing: the disappearance of the Jewish identity in individuals or masses, the complete obliteration of Jewish self-consciousness down to the very name and recollection. When it will be impossible for any man to say of himself, "I am Jew," or "my father or grandfather was Jew," this consummation will have been achieved. There is only one instrument to this end: free and unrestrained intermarriage. This act or fact alone will count. The mere changing of names, the substitution of religious forms, the so-called quote-unquote liberalization and modernization of Judaism is ineffective. It is a matter of common observation that there is no inverse ratio between the westernization of the Jew and anti-Semitism. And this very fact will have to be considered again in its relation to the feasibility of this proposal. If we talk of the submergence of the Jew, we must not play with words. Words alone cannot submerge the Jew. If there is anything in what I have said, you cannot make a Gentile of a Jew by arguing with him any more than by lynching him. You can make his children half Gentile, his grandchildren only a quarter Jewish, and so on till the balance is perfect. And this truth seems to have worked in the minds of some westernizing Jews. Reform Judaism, or modernized Judaism, is the halfway house to baptism, or at least to intermarriage. Its very purpose is such, despite the protestations of Reform Jews. It cannot be anything else. For if the desire is to become like the world around us, then all barriers must go down, and the real barrier, the conservator of all distinctions, is our practice of endogamy. One thing is quite certain: a Jew is never baptized for the purpose of becoming a Christian. His purpose is to become a Gentile. Yet obviously you do not make a Gentile of a Jew by baptizing him any more than you would make an Aryan of a Negro by painting him with ochre. The sole value in this direction of baptism is the removal of all conscious prohibition against intermarriage. Of course, even baptism is not a necessary preparation. Jews marry Gentiles without this preliminary formality. The case is somewhat different here. This is a natural wastage or attrition. Individual passion, not policy, is the cause, though the effect is the same: the disappearance of the Jew. And it certainly connotes, even if indirectly, the renunciation first of Judaism and then of Jewish affiliation. A Jew married to a Gentile may remain a Jew ostensibly, as he is in fact. His children seldom, if ever, profess Judaism or associate themselves with the Jewish people. In this case, the evasion is even more dishonest than in the first. A man who professes to belong to the Jewish faith and the Jewish people, and who nevertheless gives his grandchildren to the Gentiles, is making the best of both worlds. He evades the odious name of renegade which attaches to the baptized Jew, and at the same time contributes effectively to the dissolution of the Jewish people. It is well to note that the westernized or quote-unquote reform Jew may deplore the practice, but will not exclude such a man from the temple. The Orthodox Jew considers such a man lost to Judaism. The view, whatever its ethics, is clearer and healthier. But I want to consider not the accidental, but the deliberate or politic. Accidental intermarriage, being accidental and therefore uncontrollable, is not a policy. Baptism is a policy, the weakening of Judaism by the removal of its nationalist implications, and by modernization, is also a policy, the same policy, in fact, but more circumspect and less self-confessed. This policy has as its objective the solution of the Jewish problem by the dissolution of the Jewish people. I will consider later whether this policy can obtain this objective. The question here concerns the objective. Will the dissolution of Jewish identity by free and prolonged intermarriage resolve the struggle of the two types, or will the struggle continue in another form, less obvious but equally uncomfortable? Will the struggle center around isolated individuals, recurrent types, or will the final product be homogeneous and, in relation to this particular struggle, static? Both the negative and affirmative answers to this question are unsatisfactory. Suppose, on the one hand, the struggle continues. Suppose the Jewish character persists in strains, breaks out in individual atavisms, long after the Jewish name has perished. The problem will be the same. Your world will be confronted with recurrent instances of alien and destructive types, all the more dangerous because they are not isolated in a recognized, repudiated group. Their power of destruction will be greater because they will work from within. The Jewish problem will have disappeared, but the Gentile problem would remain as bitter as ever. Let us examine the negative answer. Suppose there are no reversions to type. Suppose the Jew is so completely absorbed as to be lost beyond possibility of detection in the surrounding world. Such a consummation, if possible, calls for one inevitable condition, that is, the proportionate Judaization of your world. It is unthinkable that so vivid an element as the Jewish people should be absorbed into your world without producing an appreciable alteration in its constitution. A world that has absorbed the Jews will to that extent be a Jewish world, and this is precisely the condition which you refuse to admit. You want no tampering with your identity. You want to remain what you are. You have no intention of meeting us at the point of balance. You do not want a world tinged with Jewish blood. You want us to be absorbed in you without leaving a trace, and with the best of intentions in the world we cannot oblige. We can, in that sense, no more destroy ourselves than we can destroy a single particle of matter. But I shall now show in the following pages that all this talk of dissolution is academic. Even if you should tolerate in prospect both of these alternatives, there are insuperable obstacles which make it highly improbable that you will ever be faced with either.